Welcome to Syntax. On this Monday Hasty Treat, we're going to be talking about AI, and we're going to be talking about how to use AI effectively while you're working. It feels like every time we talk about AI, whether it's AI tools like Cursor or something, there's often comments like, LOL, does anybody write, code anymore, or things like that, where I think people look at these things as, being these really divisive tools. And I think this episode is going to be diving into what are the ways that you can actually use it to enhance your workflow as a tool instead of like replacing the hand that writes the code, right? And I think that's where AI fits in best. So my name is Scott Tolinsky. I'm a developer from Denver. With me as always is Wes Boss. What's up, Wes?
Yes. I think this is a good episode because people are very aggressively on either side of the AI, being like,
Yes.
No, it's garbage. I don't want it to write a single line of code. And then the other thing is like, I'll use it to write everything. And the way that I use it as like an everyday developer is like, I don't use it to absolutely write everything from scratch, but there are, like you said, 7 or 8 use cases that I reach for all the time.
Yeah, and one of those is solving your errors. And Sentry has a built-in tool to do that. It'll actually look at your error log and your error stack trace when you have an error, and you can click a button to have it help you find what the cause of that error is based on the error that's coming up. So if you want that type of feature, head on over to Sentry.io, sign up and get 2 months for free. That type of thing is exactly what we're going to be talking about in this episode. Just the kind of stuff that saves you a little bit of time, not the stuff that, takes over. So I think the best place to start here might be just a little bit of a preface and talk about maybe like AI tools in general. In my mind, they should be step 1 or, step in the middle. I would never publish any code that was completely written by AI that I did not understand. I think that's a bad place to be. So first and foremost, don't do that. Don't just have the code generate, have no clue what it is, and push it up online. You could be introducing all kinds of things, whether that's security issues, usability issues, accessibility issues. You still have to have the hand of the developer who understands what's going on, at least right now. There's always going to be people being like, well, soon. Yeah, okay, but I'm talking about right now, 2024, 2025, whatever. Where are we at right now?
Yeah.
Also, test your apps. Use them. Right? Test, integration test, those types of things. Make sure that your stuff's working.
One trick that I've been using every now and then is when I want to generate AI to generate some code for something that is like a little bit complex or has many use cases, I will just write the test assertions and then pass that to AI and have it generate the code from it. Because then, like, if you're writing something that I used to say like money formatter, but that's pretty easy now with the INTL ones. But if you're writing like a function like that where you want to format a bunch of money and you have all these different edge cases and you want to pass in different currencies and you want to pass in some options, it can be worth just quickly thinking, okay, what do I want this to do? Write them up quickly as a couple assertions in a test suite, and then pass that to the AI, and it will generate the function that will hopefully pass those tests. And you can tell really quickly if it works.
Yeah. Another thing I like to do too is like scaffold in comments. You scaffold in comments, but the comments are pseudocode. So it's not like vague comments. It's like very close to code, but with text. And then it does a really good job if you have that in here. Step 1, do this. Step 2, if it does not do this, it's pseudocode. And it is almost... Yeah, it is almost getting you there. You're just not writing the syntax. So you're still having to understand the control flow, the logic, those types of things.
At some point, that might be the code, right? Like that might be programming, is just writing it in English.
Yeah, and I know people get upset at that, but if you were to interview 20-year-old Scott, I would say that sounds awesome because I don't know the code very well, and if I could just write English and have it work, although I'm not very good at English either, so that's who knows?
It's just another abstraction, like JavaScript is just an abstraction on like whatever the browser runs on, so it's another level higher.
Yeah, totally. I think one thing you should do is you should consider your AI tools as a potentially uninformed coworker. I pass this off to you. but you might not give it back to me exactly what I'm asking, and I'm now going to be the one who's going to code review this, tweak it, make it better, fix it, whatever. But you never know if what it's going to give you back is going to be usable, good, or any of that. So you do need to have that eye on it as a developer. And you still need to know your fundamentals. You always need to know your fundamentals. Listen to Syntax. We talk a lot about the fundamentals. We have a whole lot of fundamentals episodes, but you need to know them because, again, without that, you're going to be shipping buggy, inaccessible code that is not going to be great for your users. So how do you use AI tools to be effective at your job?
Yes. The first one we have here is stack trace and error finding. I use this one all the time because for the other day, I was upgrading MongoDB versions I had to go from 4 to 7, I think. And what you have to do is you have to upgrade from 4 to 5 and 5 to 6 and 6 to 7, et cetera, right? And it's a simple process, but you have to do every single step. And I didn't know that, and I was just trying to upgrade from 4 to 7, and then MongoDB just pukes a huge stack trace on there. And you look at it, and you could spend an hour reading that thing and not see it, but I just copy paste, what's wrong, paste, boom. And it told me exactly what was wrong in there, as well as how to possibly fix it. And it worked. And just being able to that needle in a haystack, huge benefit. I love that type of thing.
Yeah. And for me, also, I have reading challenges with dyslexia. And when I look at a stack trace, sometimes my eyes just glaze over. And you can go line by line and you can find it. But there is just something so nice about find the error in this massive dump of logs.
Which one matters?
Yeah, yes, because that is also a thing too. One begets another, something's a warning, something's red, something's flashing, and not everything is relevant. And so it is very good at pulling out the relevant information, especially when you log a lot. And if you log a lot, that means you have more context for it to find what potentially is wrong. So I use this all the time for error finding specifically, not necessarily always error fixing, because it can just start me on that path to where I should even look and what potentially is going on here. And for instance, it could also be like I'm not familiar with the topic. Like I'm working on some Swift stuff, right? I get this, Wes. I ported the in-app purchases plugin for Tori from Tori V1 to V2 to also using mobile payments because it was only built for using desktop payments for macOS payments. And it's this Swift in-app store kit, Apple Store Kit. I have no experience with StoreKit. I have little Rust skills. I have Rust knowledge, but I have little Rust skills. And I was able to do that by guessing and getting most of it right, by the way. I have Tori experience. So I was able to migrate some things and getting it right. But when I hit an error, I would ask Claude or whatever. I said, what's going on with this error? And it says, your manifest is malformed. Why is my manifest malformed? Well, the Tori process is creating the manifest, and something in that process is messing up your manifest. When I look at your manifest has no syntax errors. So there's something happening in the build process that is messing up your manifest. And sure enough, it ended up being a bug in Tori because that told me the code I wrote in my manifest was fine. But somewhere in that line, it was getting messed up. Not my thing. And it turned out, I found a bug for me. So yeah.
Hey, San Francisco, we're going to be in town for GitHub Universe on October 28th, and we're doing a syntax meetup. You don't have to be going to the GitHub Universe conference to meet up with us, but if you are in San Francisco, come hang out from 5 to 7 p.m. October 28th. We're going to be at the Bear Bottle Beer Garden in Salesforce Park. Admission is free. We're not going to charge you, but come hang out, and you need to grab a ticket via Eventbrite. So we put the link in our socials, in the newsletter. We'll put it in the show notes as well. Come check it out. Come hang out. Scott's going to be there. I'm going to be there. The whole team's going to be there. It's going to be exciting. See you then.
Another one is research and validation. I often ask a question like, is this something that people do? Just as like a general starter. What is this technique called? Explain this code to me. And again, these are things you want to validate outside of a AI tool. If it tells me this is a technique and it's called this, I can then go Google that technique, learn more about it, read more
Yes.
about it, validate it, understand it better. But if I'm looking at something and I don't even know what it is, like for instance, with that Swift thing, I said I have a package.swift file. Is this considered a manifest? What is this file? What does this file do? And it told me all of those things. So that's so much better than having to Google and sift through a bunch of blog posts that are just trying
Yeah.
to, get your attention.
Yeah, I find that as well. It's like I don't even know what to Google with this type
Yeah.
of thing, and I don't know what it's called, especially when it comes to like doing stuff with like math, where I don't know what the name of that is. So I just looked on my previous one. It says I have a rectangle with a point at dead center. How do I calculate the distance from center to the
Yes.
edge of a rectangle given an angle? Right? Like that is clearly some sort of math, and I don't know what to Google. Whatever. I just explained what it is. And it says, here's how to calculate the distance from center to the edge of a rectangle given an angle. And then it explained that I need to use cosine and sine with the thing. And then I say, good, now give me that in JavaScript. And then it spit out a little JavaScript function to do that type of thing, which is, I love that because I'm not a math guy, but I was doing something where I needed to adjust the speed of a CSS gradient given the angle. So there was a certain angle where it needed to be faster and a certain angle where it needed to be slower. And based on that, I needed to speed it up. So I figured it out with the distance to edge function, and it gave me all of that. And I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, that's a much better use case than like if you were to say, give me that math in CSS. What it's going to do is it's going to invent a bunch of CSS functions that don't exist, right? Because I had that recently where I said I'm working on this math. I need to calculate this distance with CSS calc, and it invented like 3 different CSS functions that do not exist. I'm just like, okay, I can look at this at an instant and be like, this is not what I should be using this for.
I actually did get it to give me a cubic Bezier timing function at the end of the day,
yeah.
but
Cool.
I got it to give me the English, and then I made it convert it to JavaScript, and then I followed it up and with some more information and said, now convert this to using a. Actually,
But
it
is it
wanted to
linear
give me
or
a
what?
cubic Bezier, but then I told it, give me a linear function. And I think linear is too new and it didn't understand what to do.
So you just get the Bezier points and apply that to linear. So yeah, you still have to know what linear takes or any of this
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, it doesn't solve any of this for you. One thing I really love using these tools for is completing mundane tasks, like specifically like Cursor. It does a really good job of creating many variables at once. Let's say you have data that's derived from other data, or potentially you have something that's very obvious and you're applying something to something else, and that information exists somewhere in your code base. It can look at that and just show you, like, Copilot does, the creation of many variables or the creation of each loops or wrapping something in a try catch. Like Cursor can do all that in an instant, or even like writing out like a fancy autocomplete, right? I need to dot map something and I can just do .m and then it autocompletes a dot map. Now the stuff inside of there, I might just rip out immediately, but it saved me from having to write the code, the syntax in that little bit of
even
time
sets
saving.
up your variables for you,
Is a lot. Yeah, that
It's
is a
fast.
good amount of time saving. And again, it's not like I'm just saying, yes, okay, this is the final code. It's like, no, you set this up for me as a fancy autocomplete, just like I used snippets for in the past.
Yeah.
I'm writing all these hand-coded bespoke snippets, and now, Copilot just takes that need away
It's
from
so
me. Or
true.
Cursor does, yeah.
It's a snippet, like it's a context aware smart snippet where
Yes.
it will try to guess what you want, or you can give it a little bit more context and it will render it on out, and like that type of stuff. Because like, how long does it take to type out a map, filter, reduce, and create all the variables and reference the indexes? Like that could be a couple minutes versus 2 seconds.
Yeah. And you're going to get people saying, it takes me a couple seconds. Sure. But like you could also hit tab and it's going to take a fraction of a second. And like you don't ship your snippet code. So I do. I see these as like kind of like fancy snippets in my mind.
I like that. Refactoring is a really big one where like I was going through my code base the other day and I was upgrading my version of Mongoose, and I had moved all of my queries over to async await 4 or 5 years ago, except I had 6 or 7 of them related to auth, where I was like, I'm just not going to touch that. I don't want to mess with. I'm going to leave it with callbacks. And Mongoose has officially deprecated any callbacks in their ORM. So I was like, all right, well, I got to move these last 6 over to using a sync await. And I did the first one by hand, and I was like, this is kind of complicated because the error is not being returned at the same level. So I have to handle the error at a different point, and there's just a lot going on in it. And especially related to auth, I was like, I don't want to screw this up. So I just flipped it over to AI and had them do it. And it did a much better job than I would have, because I would have accidentally forgot something. And of course I checked it over, but in that case, I think that the AI did a better job and was more safe than me going through manually and doing all 6 of them myself. I probably would have goofed something up at some point.
Yeah. I use these things a lot for that, and I think this is one area where Cursor shines above Copilot, because, like, let's say I need to modify a CSS class in one spot, and maybe I spelled it wrong or whatever. You could do a find and replace. Sure, that is, Command Shift F, and then you write it, you find and replace it. Or I can just start typing the way I want it to be changed, and then Cursor is going to pick that up and have me tab to autocomplete the other one. That's faster than a find and replace to me. Now, granted, you're doing that across multiple files, maybe not so much, depending on the tools that you have.
Yeah.
But if you're just in a single file, a single thing, man, and you have something referenced here and there and whatever, instead of doing a find and replace, I personally found it to be faster than just start typing, which is one of the reasons why I like a tool like Cursor over something like Copilot right now. But again, it's just a personal preference at the end of the day. To me, that just works a little bit faster. I found it refactoring to be a nice use case.
You should be using rename symbol for that, though.
For a class name? Is that possible?
Yeah.
A CSS class name? It will find that? I use it for, like, variable names. I use rename symbol constantly for symbol names, but I didn't know that would work for something like a string in your code base.
Yeah. It's a good question if it does it on multiple files. Like with TypeScript, like a function, it's able to, like, follow the imports and replace it everywhere.
Function. But
with, like, a CSS variable, it will at least replace all of the instances in that scope.
Really? Let me try this. I'm renaming dropdown button to dropdown butt. It did not change it. Sorry, Wes. It changed it when I used it, but it did not change it in the CSS in the same file.
Let me see. I'm going to right click, rename symbol. It suggests renaming highlight to a variable called color tint, and it replaced it in 4 places for me.
With a string?
With a variable. I renamed my variable.
Oh, I'm talking about strings, dude. Like CSS class names.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Not JavaScript classes.
I thought it was a CSS variable.
Yeah, sorry. I'm talking about like strings. That's where I would use that for. Like, typically where you'd reach for find and replace. Yeah, if it's any type of variable, I'm reaching for rename symbol. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Or another good example of that would be if you are using, like, a utility class. Like, for example, you have, like, a padding -4 or text -large. And you're like, you know what? I want to make that text medium. So you rename one of them to text medium, and a Cursor will immediately be like, you want to update the other 7 that are on this page? Like, totally. Absolutely, I do.
Yeah, I think that's such a good use case for this. And again, people will immediately say, well, just find and replace. Yeah, sure. I find this to be faster personally, but yeah, either way.
And it's also like flow as well, like that's just how you work. And as you're typing, it suggests what you want. Like, I don't have to break out to this other function and do this thing. It simply just knows what I'm trying to do. It understands.
Yeah, pop over to a dialogue or anything like that.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I also use for quite a bit for, like, simple TypeScript stuff. Sometimes it's not that I can't do the TypeScript or find the right types or know the right types, but there's occasionally types that I just have to look up, for things that are built in, or even React specific or Svelte specific types. I just haven't have them memorized or, whatever. So I use it to add types for things when I want to be lazy and have it type an entire file for me or something like that. Or perhaps I have taken a file that's in JavaScript with JS DOM style typings or JS doc style typings and say, make this into TypeScript for me instead of JS doc. That's a perfect use case. That's refactoring a whole file. It has the
Yeah.
types already. It has the context, and it's just switching how they're being used in that file. So I actually do end up using that quite a bit.
Yeah, totally. It also with like complex things where like one that I do a lot in React land is like you want to extend a element. You want to
Yes.
make like a custom editor box, and that extends a div. And then you want to destructure the class name, maybe inline styles, and then you want to destructure the children and the rest of the props to spread. That writing that sucks. That's a lot to type. And if you have done it once already in your code base, it will understand the pattern that you like to use, and then boom, that spits that thing out, and is really nice.
Yeah, I use it to summarize a lot of docs to help me read. Like I mentioned, I have some reading trouble, so summarizing is great for me. That's a tool that I use all the time. Or even being able to ask questions of docs and source code. If you have it in that context, the docs and source code, again, you can ask questions of it. Again, as step one, validate, confirm, make sure those things are actually real. But it's good at that because it has that context, and when you're asking it about something that it has sitting in front of it, it does a good job of being able to parse through that.
I actually got bit on Cursor the other day. I made a video that was like, Cursor is actually better. And I was like refactoring some rotation values into external CSS variables. And I was like, look how good it did. And I posted it and I was like, this is really good. And then people realized that the Cursor forgot a negative value in one of the variables that had posted out. I had not caught it. And that's like the perfect example of what everyone is afraid of, which is like, this is not like a Cursor thing. Like all the AI will have these issues where I look at it, I said, that's exactly what I want. It looks good, but I literally forgot a negative value, which if that was billing code, that would have been a bad day. Simply negative 1.3 or 1.3, that's a major difference. So yeah. I'm glad that it got caught, and I'm glad that it was just some CSS rotation value, but it just goes to show that you have to give it a good look over before you blindly or even glancingly accept it.
Yeah, I know it is you at the end of the day are responsible for the code that you put out into the world, whether or not the editor wrote it or not. So it reflects on you, but it also, what you're putting out there matters. And as artisans, we need to make sure that even if we're using these tools, the code that we're shipping at the end of the day meets our high standards.
You're responsible at the end of the day. Like I'm part of the Tesla subreddits and a couple of Facebook groups, and pretty often you see people saying, I was running full self-driving and I hit someone. Like
trust that stuff at all.
Scrape the side of the garage or whatever. What will Tesla do? And it's like, or like I got a speeding ticket or whatever. It's like, you're still responsible for the stuff at the end of the day. Like, don't be an idiot. Like if you see it, maybe check to see if you're going to hit another car when you're sitting in it. You can't just blindly hope that the stuff works really well.
Yeah, and that might be a branding issue where they've called it full self-driving, like complete to auto self-drive, don't touch the wheel,
In Canada, at least it's supervised. They put supervised in brackets. Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer when they call driver assistance, because that's really what it's doing. And AI to me is coding assistance. It is not
little driver buddy.
Yeah, yes. Please turn the wheel for me ever so slightly so I have to use less muscle to turn the wheel while I'm driving. Because my car does all that stuff, it will back out of parking spots. It will, do all those things. And it works really well. But I sure as hell would not trust it without having a nice, firm supervision of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing also, too, last one here I have is quick hits, like insignificant quick scripts that you need for X, Y, and Z. We talked a little bit about, I spoke at Denver Script and we did a whole thing where we pulled, names from meetup.com. I knew how many people had RSVP'd to this meetup. The meetup DOM structure was not very good, as in there was no direct identifier on the name, but I knew that you could drill down with like children of a children of a children to get the exact one for everything. So I copied the DOM and I sent it to Claude and I say, give me a quick script to pull everyone's name out. The name is in this element. And it wrote me that quick script. That script is insignificant. When I run that script and it spits out, X amount of people, I know that those people, that's how many people RSVP'd. So I can validate that the results are correct instantly. And that's like insignificant. And if I were to try to write that script and I was under pressure because we have a talk to give in 5 minutes, and writing that script in that 5 minutes that I had would have not worked out super well, even though CJ did one live. So props to CJ for that.
Same thing with like formatting, going from one format to another. When I was putting my flights information for GitHub Universe into my calendar, it just like, they don't give you a calendar invite anymore. So I just like copy pasted the entire itinerary and said like, just format this in a way that is easy to input into my calendar and to scan, and it did a good job. I found it is not good at stats though, because when we did the syntax listener survey, I fed it like a CSV of stats. I was like, give me stats on X, Y, and Z, and give me some interesting things. And every time I went to like tally it manually to see if it was right, it was off. It didn't line up at all. So you certainly have to be careful with math, but simply formatting text is really good.
Yeah. Sick. Cool. Well, that's all I have for this one. Again, remember, like we said, you are responsible for the code. It's there to be an assistant. It's there to assist you. It's not there to take over completely. And if somebody is shipping code without, just AI only, I would be a little bit cautious of that personally. I know other people are different about that. I think it's good to have a level-headed approach to this stuff personally, because yes, these tools are there. They're not going away. I think anybody who thinks that this stuff is all of a sudden going to disappear at any given point is wrong. I think it's only going to continue to improve. Whether or not you decide to utilize these tools in various ways is up to you. But me personally, I do like to use these as an assistant, and I think they can be great as an assistant if you know what you're doing.
Beautiful. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we will catch you later.
Peace.